All right, after that first half of whirlwind session, we have Greg Brown, our sponsor and host for today. And we also welcome Petra Kasunmach, who's just joined us. Greg, as you know, he's partner and chairman of Fasken Martineau firm's private equity group, an active member of several other practice groups, including securities, mergers and acquisitions, and the Asia Pacific group. He carries an active transaction-oriented practice with special focus on advising high-growth Canadian mid-market companies with a global outlook, as well as several of the leading investment dealers, merchant banks, and private equity funds that provide financing to them. He is actively involved in Ontario innovation ecosystem, is long-standing director of TiE Toronto, and has been our president for past 2 years. Cognizant of the unique challenges faced by entrepreneurs, Greg championed hiring a seasoned entrepreneur who's also experienced lawyer to run SEED program and as entrepreneur in residence to be the program's principal interface with firms' entrepreneurial clients. The tremendous support, guidance that he's provided to our two programs, TiE Institute and TiE Quest, is commendable. I now request Greg to come and give his presentation. Please help me welcome Greg.
Well, I'm sorry we had to suffer through that embellished introduction, but thank you for doing so. It is a pleasure to be here, and great thanks to Lalit and his colleague and fellow director, Sunny Kumar, who have been running the TiE Institute and doing a really terrific job. This is the first year that we've run it with the social entrepreneurship element, and we're really excited about that. We think, I think as Petra will also sort of highlight, its time has come, and I think it's a really welcome development in business where we're seeing responsible corporate citizens who, in addition to meeting their fiduciary duty to their shareholders, which of course is to, maximize profits, many of them are also looking at developing a very committed strategy to achieving some measurable social impact. And it can be environmental, it could be the adoption of highly responsible environmental practices, it can be the employment of marginalized persons, and it can be anything in between. There are really no limit to the imagination, or it's really just your imagination that limits what your social objective might be. But I think what we're seeing is, particularly as companies get larger and they get more shareholders, what those stakeholders are looking for in the leadership of the company that they've invested in is a commitment to not only maximizing profits, but actually doing something, giving something back to the community, and giving something back, and actually being an agent of social change and development. So we're really delighted to value drivers. To sort of support this new movement by providing some guidance to young entrepreneurs about how to build a company that has this double bottom line. Really clear focus on maximizing profits like any traditional business, but also by pursuing some meaningful social objective at the same time. What I'm going to talk about tonight, after my much smarter colleagues have talked to you about some pretty technical stuff, is a little bit more, it's a combination of law and business. Having done lots of work with early stage companies, and worked for VCs and private equity firms, and done lots of M&A, the buying and selling of both private and public businesses, we've seen lots of things that influence the determination of value in the eyes of prospective buyers. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. And I'm also going to, most of that is generic to companies that are double bottom line or not. This is, I think, has applicability across the board. But I've also identified a number of things that I think are very important to early stage companies that do want to have their stakeholders know, have their prospective investors know, have their customers know that they are a social enterprise, that they do have this very committed double bottom line. So we'll talk about some strategies around ensuring that you get full value of that as well. So what are value drivers? Value drivers are basically, operating and organizational elements and factors that have a really significant influence on your value. The value in the eyes of prospective investors, or if you're doing an M&A trend, a liquidity event, in the eyes of a prospective buyer. And what we're going to talk about are a number of strategies that I would encourage you to adopt at the beginning of the development of your new business. Don't wait, like what most entrepreneurs do, and it's really understandable, is they chase revenue all day long. And they say, oh, we'll deal with our shareholders agreement, we'll deal with those employment contracts, we'll make sure we have better reporting to our stakeholders, we'll deal with all that. I'm just really busy now getting revenue. Completely understandable, but there is folly in that thinking, because when it comes to doing an investment with an arm's length party, not mom and dad, not friends and family, but a more sophisticated investor is going to be much more critical and much more analytical as to the merits of your investment. Or if you go to sell your whole business, when they do what's called due diligence, when they go in and sort of unbutton your company and look at your books, look at your operating stream, look at your employees, look at your customer list, look at the way you carry on business, when they lift the hood on your business, that's when they're going to really get first impressions about the value of your business. So if you've got lousy record keeping, if your employment contracts are ambiguous, if you haven't done a good job protecting your IP, if you haven't made sure that you have full ownership of your IP, which is also one of the most important drivers in value, it can really undermine your value proposition to your prospective investor or buyer. So really important to sort of adopt these best practices at the beginning. And the other thing I would encourage you to do, and this is not a self-serving thing for lawyers and other professional service providers, but it is seek out guidance, ask questions, get mentors, get a good lawyer who's really committed to, wants to understand your business, wants to add value to it, and same with your accountant. Like, get an accountant who isn't just going to do your numbers, but he's going to have ideas how you can better operate your business, how you can better present your numbers, how you can save costs. I mean, get guys, men and women who are really interested in your business, and it's worth taking your time to find those advisors, and it's worth spending the money on it. So a few things we're going to look at tonight are a few of the key drivers. And so first thing you're going to do when you're building your business is you're going to be looking for people that are going to support you financially. So you're going to be very motivated to bring in new shareholders. And you're either going to bring in shareholders who are going to, put in money and get a piece of your business, get shares of your business, or you're going to find men or women or institutions that are going to loan you money, and they're going to either have that loan secured or unsecured. And so we'll refer to those collectively as stakeholders for these discussions. But shareholders are the men and women and institutions that invest money to take shares in your company. When you have an early stage company, one recommendation is try to avoid getting too many shareholders. And the reason for that is, sometimes you just have to do it because that's where the money is. You can only get it in small increments. But the problem is if you have multiple shareholders, getting decisions made can be very difficult. Now, a lot of decisions, most decisions, are the responsibility of the directors of the company. So, you basically have your shareholders own it, they elect your directors, and then your directors appoint your officers. The men and women are on the front line running your business day to day. But what you'll find, and we're going to advise you later in this presentation, I think Arun probably referenced this as well, is that you really want to have a shareholders agreement, a unanimous shareholders agreement, and I underscore unanimous because that way every shareholder and the company are all party to it. The reason you do that is you never want a rogue shareholder who's going to hold you hostage. So if you want to do something big, like sell your business, or get an extensive credit facility, or do something that requires shareholder approval, you don't want somebody who's going to hold you hostage and hold you back, particularly when it comes to a sale. You don't want everybody that's all excited to seize an opportunity to sell the business, but then you have one man or woman who doesn't want to, doesn't agree with the terms. So there's techniques for sort of bringing them along, but that's all done in a shareholders agreement. It's very important that you have one. And if you don't have one, or if it's friends and family and you don't want to spend the money getting it done at first, what I recommend you do is you get a voting trust, so that in one or two hands of like-minded people running the business, that they will make those decisions and they will be entrusted to make those decisions by those investors. So getting voting trusts are really, and they're very simple to do, but the most important thing I'd recommend is getting a unanimous shareholders agreement. Now, another thing about a unanimous shareholders agreement, what it can do is it can actually circumscribe the powers that your directors have. So typically directors have almost unlimited powers to lead your business. to guide your business. And they have a fiduciary duty to all the shareholders, not to any one particular shareholder, not a particular shareholder that may be nominated them, or if you have, typically when you have arm's length investors or larger investors, they'll say, hey, I want to be an investor, but I want to have a nominee on your board so I have a window into the business operations. So I know what's going on. That's a really good idea, but there's a little folly in that thinking, because all directors, regardless of if they've been nominated by a particular investor or not, their duty goes beyond their obligation to a shareholder, it goes to all shareholders. So very important when you're inviting people onto your board, or if you're accepting someone on your board at the behest of an investor, that you have a little document, and any good lawyer can prepare this for you, basically terms of reference. Here are your duties as a director. Basically memorializes what your obligations are, what your duties are, so that is never lost on anybody. There's never any confusion about where their obligations and loyalties lie. Back to not having too many shareholders, because it can be challenging when you come to decision making, is try to keep, like, first of all, early stage companies, the basic principle, the old KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, is a really good thing to fall back on. The more complicated it gets, the more difficult it is to manage, the more complicated it is for investors to understand. So try to keep your operations as simple as possible, your governance systems as simple as possible, and your share structure as simple as possible. And where entrepreneurs often get distracted by this is they'll, one guy will come in and say, I really want to back you up, but I got to have some special terms around my investment. So I want my shares to have these unique rights. And then you end up with several classes of shares with often competing rights. And first of all, lawyers often screw it up, unless they do this all the time, because you have to make sure that if you're giving rights to someone else, that you're not compromising rights you've already given to another party. So try to keep your share structure as simple as possible. Another reason you do that is when your business matures and you're bringing more sophisticated investors, particularly a VC or a sophisticated seed investor, what they will typically do is they'll say, you know what, we're going to reorganize the share structure because I want to have a particular class of preferred shares that does a couple things. It ensures that if it all goes to hell in a handbasket and we liquidate the business, I get paid first before anybody else. Now, that, of course, falls behind, just so you all understand how it happens when you do liquidate a business. The first people that get paid are secure creditors. So if you have a bank line, they're going to say, okay, I want a general security agreement, which gives me a first-ranking interest, security interest over all the assets of your business. So those secure creditors, they're number one. Number two are the unsecured creditors. And number three are the shareholders. So if you're a shareholder and you got a bunch of creditors out there and things don't go well, it can really diminish the value you're going to get on a liquidation, so be very careful of that. But what more sophisticated investors are going to look for is that after those creditors get paid, and then we'll typically have a very watchful eye on what credit you do extend, and particularly what security you extend, they will say that I get paid first, so they will want preferred shares. So if you go with friends and family and buddies and you have a really complicated share structure, that's all going to get reworked when a sophisticated shareholder comes to the table anyway. So better to keep it simple as possible, and ideally just with common shares out of the gate. Also, another thing to avoid is avoid getting it really complicated with warrants and options and phantom share plans and different classes of shares with different voting rights and so on. One, because it's difficult to manage, and two is that when an investor comes in, they're going to, like options, warrants, conversion rights on debt, all those things set up alarm bells for investors because they can be highly dilutive when they actually vest. So if I have an option and I exercise it, if I have warrants and I exercise them, both of those things give you the ability to acquire shares in the future at a specified price or upon a particular event occurring. That is obviously going to dilute the investor. So there's a lot of those options and warrants hanging out there. It will go into their assessment and calculation of how widely held the company is and how dilutive it would be if those shares and warrants were actually exercised. So again, back to the whole idea about keep your capital structure as simple as possible. Sorry, I just want to move these along as I do it. Okay. again, now this is about, minimize dilution drivers. So dilution drivers, again, are things that are instruments that if they're exercised or acted upon will actually result in the issuance of more shares, which will dilute other shareholders. So those are options that you give to employees, and it's a really good idea to have option plans. They're very effective ways to incent your important employees and executive team members. It gives them the ability to acquire interest in the company. It aligns their interests. They get skin in the game. They can also be used as retention tools. So often options may not vest until a particular time in the future. It can be the passage of time, or it can be the achievement of milestones. There can be lots of things that they can be entirely customized so that you can basically drive certain behavior because the achievement of that behavior, the performance of that behavior will result in those rights to acquire shares crystallizing. So it's just a great way to motivate people. But just be careful that you don't have too many things outstanding that could be exercised that are going to end up diluting oncoming investors, because other investors, if they see tons of warrants out there or debt that have conversion rights, they're going to look at your business or your company on what's called a fully diluted basis, which means they won't look at just the number of the shares that are outstanding today. They'll look at the number of shares that will be outstanding if everybody exercised all these various rights that they have by virtue of holding options, warrants, or convertible debt. So just be, again, really good idea to give your key people the opportunity to have equity, to have skin in the game, but just be careful that you manage it. You don't promise the farm and give too much away too early. Shareholder vetoes. Something that's very common is, particularly when you're getting people that are going to invest significant amounts of money into your business, is they'll say, hey, if there's a few things I want to have a veto over. So typically they will be, if I'm going to sell substantially all the assets of the business, if I'm going to take on a whole whack of debt over a certain prescribed level, if I am going to do a hiring of someone that's going to or incur any kind of debt or obligation that's going to expose the company to an obligation over a certain level. Other things might be changing your line of business, competing in a certain environment, things of that nature. And what they'll say is that in those instances, when you want to do those things, you want to take on that amount of debt, if you want to sell a key asset, if you want to compromise something in the business, you have to get either a specified level of shareholder approval, which is typically much higher than just a simple majority, which is what most decisions require. In fact, most decisions of the business don't require shareholder input at all. Again, as I said earlier, this is typically left most things are left to the exclusive domain of the directors, who are very important, obviously, because they direct the officers. But shareholders and shareholders' agreements can circumscribe those rights and determine which things will go back to the shareholders for approval. So that's what these vetoes are all about. And some investors will say, you can't do enumerate a number of things unless I say so. So you have to be very careful about that. And if you give too many of those vetoes away early, when there's less things to give away down the road. So you have to be very careful about, and it's very difficult to resist someone who's got a check. I mean, that's the bottom line, particularly when you're running your business on a shoestring. Every dollar counts. You're desperate to get revenue in there. You're trying to limit your expenses. You're trying to get money into the till for operating purposes. So if an investor has a check, it's very, very seductive, and it's, I think, okay, I'll give him whatever he needs to get this police to check and buy some shares. But just resist that and get guidance. That's if you're feeling stressed about those, that's usually a really good sign that you want to go talk to your lawyer, go talk to your accountant, go talk to your mentor, and go talk to your board. And that's why, populating your board with men and women that you really trust, whose judgment you have a lot of faith in, because they've been around the block, they know the industry that you're in, or if you are a social entrepreneur, they've got, your board members have experience in and a passion about the same social objective, because having an alignment of all those things is, obviously very critical. Secured debt obligations, again, the guy with the gold makes the rules. So when you're trying to finance your business, whether it's through equity or through debt, the people that are providing you that financial facilities are going to often dictate what the rules are, at least in the early going. And the only problem about giving security away, giving people a security interest in your assets, so even if it's mom and dad and lending you money to get your business, or friends, or even some angel investors that will give you support early in the going, if you give them if they're giving you debt and you're giving them security interest in your business, that obviously causes concern to large sophisticated investors that are going to come in with equity, because as we mentioned earlier, secured creditors rank ahead on a liquidation or dissolution of your business. So just be very cautious about when and to whom you grant security. Built-in liquidation bonds, again, these are things that can cause prospective investors anxiety if there are parties that have other investors that have puts to you. So if they aren't getting a certain return, or if you haven't achieved certain milestones by a certain time, or if you haven't met some sort of matrix that they've dictated, they can put their shares back to you, which means you have to give them their money back. So put rights are often tried to be negotiated, but should be resisted for that reason. Priority liquidation rights, again, whether it's early investors, if they're looking for preferred shares, they're going to give them unique rights to get paid before anybody else, before the common shareholders do. It's going to restrict your ability to entice common share investors. So be cautious about, again, the bottom line really is, when you're giving rights to other people that can adversely impact your business or can impact your ability, your decision-making latitude about your business, do it cautiously and get really good advice before you do so. Incentivizing management. Now, this has sort of a double meaning, because the engagement of your management, the dedication of your management is going to be fueled by, do they love your business? Do they share your vision? And if you do have a double bottom line business, it's really important to have value alignment. So do they believe in, do they share your passion in the social objective that you're trying to achieve in parallel with your business objectives? So a couple ways you can incent them, obviously, is provide them the ability to invest in the business and have them ideally participate as common shareholders, so they have exactly the same risk exposure that the founder has, and you'll feel a great sense of alignment by doing that. And a great way to sort of try to ensure value alignment is to build terms of reference, like we were going to suggest for directors, can also be a great idea for your management team. It's sort of making sure that they buy into the mission statement. There is a shared vision. And it's a really good discipline for entrepreneurs and business owners to actually write their vision down in words, because it really forces you to focus, what am I trying to achieve here? What am I trying to build here? And what is the social impact I'm trying to achieve? Because that discipline, the writing it down, creates a great discipline for the leader, but it also it's a touchstone for all the people that you bring in who you want to make sure share a common vision. Obviously, the members of your management team, very critical that they share that. So memorializing that in terms of reference or a mission statement is a really effective tool. And if you can, create both. If your social objective, if you can develop a matrix around measuring the achievement of your effort. Now that could be if it's employing marginalized persons, if it is saving energy in the operation of your business, whatever your social objective is, the more measurable a matrix you can create, the better. One, for demonstrating that what you're trying to do is real and measurable, and that if you're trying to sell your business on the basis that it's got a double bottom line, that you actually have a legitimate social objective, investors would love to see a matrix and would like to see how you're scoring against it. So, working with people that, and maybe you're going to talk a little bit about this, but or wherever you went. Sorry, there you are. About building measurability, because you hear a lot of talk in the last couple of years about corporate social responsibility. Great movement. Most of it has been reactive, to be completely honest, because companies have been criticized by their stakeholders for not being responsible about the environment, not having enough diversity in their labor pool, lots of criticisms. So now stakeholders are demanding much more of the leadership of the businesses in which they invest to make sure that they're actually paying attention to these things. In Canada, you see it mostly, or not mostly, but very bright light shining on the natural resource sector, whether it's like any extraction industry. So whether it's mining or oil and gas, the leaders of those businesses are facing tremendous pressure from their stakeholders to ensure that they're being as environmentally responsible as possible, that if they're operating and doing exploration or developing a mine or an oil concession in a foreign nation, that they're abiding by appropriate and responsible and respectful labor practices and environmental practices there. The Canadian government tried to impose that on Canadian mining companies a few years ago with Bill C-300. It was ultimately defeated by the mining industry because it was a bit draconian the way it was operated, but the message got out to investors, and investors I think are becoming, and not just investors but lenders as well, becoming increasingly committed to ensuring that the companies they're supporting are good corporate citizens. So again, like articulating your mission statement, I think it's really a great idea to articulate in writing what are your best operating principles around corporate social responsibility, and make that part of your core operating principles, and make sure you can score it. Make sure that you don't just talk it up, you can actually demonstrate that you're walking it as well. I think you'll find it's very important to shareholders, but also very important to prospective investors and buyers. Now the last few slides are really just about adopting a best practices culture, or creating that, or dedicating your energy to building that culture from the beginning. And again, that goes to everything from, as we mentioned here, making sure you've got really thoughtful, sound agreements with all your key employees. Anybody who's helping you build intellectual property, make sure that it's very clear in their employment arrangements and their employment contracts that all the work they're doing is, and all the benefit, all the research they do, all the discoveries they make, all the IP they create is to be owned by and for the benefit of the corporation. So that they have to waive all their moral rights in that, and they have to give up ownership of that, and that should be very thoughtfully and carefully articulated in your employment agreements. So you have to spend time, and it's painful to spend that money when resources are really finite and they're really going, but it will absolutely save you lots of money down the road. Because if you go to sell your business and you have a former employee who sees that you're going to get a great price for the sale of your business, and that business is something critical to that business is some IP that they were involved in the development of. We've seen it in several occasions where they end up saying, look, you have to pay me, you have to compensate me for what I did, or I will scupper your transaction. I will put up a claim, I will start a cause of action, I will say you're selling something that does not belong to you. So that can be an absolute nightmare when you've got wonderful, what would otherwise be a wonderful liquidity event in front of you. So very important that you have those agreements built very carefully at the beginning of your relationship with all your employees. And again, alignment of values. When we had the inaugural TiESep event about social entrepreneurship, we had some great speakers, and a common theme with them is, for these companies to grow, to be able to attract investors, to attract supporters, to develop ambassadors, to find champions, to get great mentors, you have to, one, be able to really clearly articulate what your social mission is, and then you have to make sure that those that are coming in, those that are supporting you, those that you're joint venturing with, share that common value. So alignment of values, and you're going to hear this again and again, I think, throughout this whole educational curriculum, but it's a really, it can't be overstated. So getting that alignment is absolutely critical. this is really just an extension, shareholder communications, reporting, Financial reporting is always near and dear to the hearts of investors. They like to know how their money's working. Are you meeting your sales objectives? Are you meeting your revenue objectives? Are you controlling costs as you said you would? Are your projections? Where are you relative to your budget? Where are you relative to your business plan? Reporting on all that stuff, although it takes, that's just after you run the business all day and you're out selling all day and you're proving your business out all day to your customers, then you have to go and you got to take care of your stakeholders. But you need their support. You have to earn their love and respect. And if you want them to be champions for you, to intermediate opportunities for you, to find new customers, to introduce you to their networks, to really leverage the quality of that relationship and all the potential of that relationship, you need to keep them informed. So that's what you do after you do everything out and you put the kids to bed, or you kiss your wife goodnight or your husband goodnight. That's when you go back to your desk board and you prepare communications to your stakeholders, because keeping those lines of communication wide open and well filled with highly articulated information and really good financial information will build tremendous confidence amongst your stakeholders. Again, obviously, avoid the temptation of deferring this until you got time, because there never is a convenient time, right, for this stuff. It's always challenging. And these challenges are frankly not unique to early stage companies. Even an enterprise of this nature is constantly reinventing itself and trying to make sure that everybody's bought into it. So, and quite frankly, when you have a flat ownership hierarchy like you do in a professional services firm, again, getting that value alignment, getting that buy-in is really critical. But the bigger your enterprise gets, the more difficult it gets. But a very galvanizing thing can be, and I think this is the really exciting thing around social entrepreneurship, is that it doesn't need in any way to compromise your more traditional business objectives, your ambition to have a high revenue, high margin, highly profitable business where you can create lots of wealth, hopefully for yourself and for your investors. But can also it's very exciting that you can also be an agent of social change. And if you're doing that effectively and you're communicating that to your stakeholders and to the community, and everybody on your team is out with the same brand, the same message, it can actually have fabulously positive impact on your business, on your faith in your customers, on the loyalty of your customers. As the world gets more and more competitive, having a sticky relationship with your customer gets more and more challenging. And I can tell you, as lawyers, we wrestle this all the time, because as companies are becoming more and more fee sensitive in challenging economic times like we have today, you're getting crushed on fees constantly. That's the new reality, and I think anybody who's selling services will find that it's very challenging to keep your pricing where you'd like it to be. But if those customers will leave based on price, but what will help keep them stay is if they really believe in what you're trying to do, not just as a business, but also because you're trying to do something to affect some social objective that they have a really shared passion about. So it can be a very powerful competitive advantage and differentiator in your business to have a well-articulated, meaningful social goal. Okay. I guess this is particularly relevant to early stage companies but it's also even mature. You're always evolving your business plan. Your business plan that you have today for your young business is based on the facts that you have now, the assumptions you've made today, but you're going to have better information tomorrow, you're going to have new clients tomorrow, you're going to have new challenges tomorrow, you have new competitors tomorrow. So your business plan is a very dynamic document. It never rests, it never gathers dust, it constantly has to be updated. But as it does, you have to make sure that that it's going to remain consistent with your social goal as well. So as you'll be nimble. You're going to pivot as you build your business. But what you probably can't do without, I think, disillusioning some of your supporters is if that is going to actually compromise your ability to meet your social objective at the same time. So I think one of the complexities of having a social enterprise is that's unique to those that are just profit maximizing is when you pivot, you have to look at the consequence in your social goal as well. So you have to be wearing two sets of glasses all the time. And I guess the closing statement on this really is, as entrepreneurs are often very dynamic personalities, and a lot of people fall in love with the entrepreneur. And if you really believe in the longevity of your business and you really want your stakeholders to have confidence in the business, the goodwill you build through the power of yourself as an entrepreneur, you have to make sure that that gets attributed to the company, not you, because investors will be very nervous that if you leave, everything leaves. So, that comes back to all kinds of things like, key man insurance. Often guys or investors will want that. But if you have key people and they're really passionate champions of your business, if they leave, it can really leave your company without a voice. So you need to make sure the company itself has a voice that isn't just embodied in that entrepreneur. So very important that you try to attribute your growth, your success, your vision to your entire team and the company. And then lastly, for those of you that are really committed to social entrepreneurship, I encourage you to don't do it just to your business. Go out and talk to youth about it. Go to schools, write blogs about it. Like, become a voice of what you're passionate about. Make sure people, so they hear your business name, they're going to know the social issue that you are rallying around, that your business is connected to. And again, it's sort of like so don't do a social enterprise that isn't really genuine to you. Don't try to build one to bolt onto your business just so it is a differentiator. If it isn't genuine, that will become abundantly clear to the people out there to whom it is a genuine passion. So it has to be genuine, it has to be real, it has to be very carefully articulated, and it has to be something that is embraced by all of those who lead your business forward. So that's it on value drivers, and I'll take any questions that you might have. Okay. Hi, what's your name?
I'm Linda.
Hi.
Craig, you talked about double bottom line.
What does that mean?
Well, I guess I've heard this term triple bottom line, so is double bottom line more standard?
Double takes care of social plus profit, triple takes care of environment, social plus profit. So it's people, profit, and planet. Take care of people, that's social bottom line. Take care of profit, that's economic bottom line. Take care of planet, that's environmental bottom line.
Yeah, and so there's all kinds of interesting parlance being developed or vernacular around this whole movement. When I say double bottom line, I just mean, I don't care if it's environmental or if it's some other social objective, but it's not a clear, profit maximization objective. There's something out there, some social ambition that you've got as well. That is distinct to your business. So how many people here who are entrepreneurs already have a double bottom line business or want to incorporate that into their business model? And so can you share a little bit about your experience and how you found what it's like?
We're starting it up. But absolutely. So I'm actually working with a professor from the University of Waterloo, and we're doing low-cost digital X-ray. And the low-cost digital X-ray is being designed for developing nations, where digital X-ray is still $100,000 plus. It's useful for screening, especially in lung diseases. And we're looking at TB as one of the screening devices. And people are still dying from that. 1 to 5 million people can die from pulmonary disease still, TB being one of the leading causes, and a simple X-ray would actually diagnose and help cure these people. So one of the challenges is getting digital X-ray into rural parts of the world, or any X-ray into rural parts of the world. So that's sort of the second bottom line, I guess, is really focusing on getting X-ray. And he's got IP, it's going to help lower the cost of the technology that we can sell and deploy into developing nations.
And is that, having that parallel objective, has that helped you in sourcing funding?
We're in the middle of sourcing funding, and it's more challenging, for sure. We had a call with one investor who initially, I guess, misunderstood the overall concept, and he was just thinking of it as a medical device play. And when he realizes more of a social play, it wasn't his interest.
Right.
So it actually becomes more difficult. You've got to go with more of a philanthropic investor, the one who actually who cares about that second bottom line, essentially.
What about any other entrepreneurs here who have discovered the challenge of, if you want to build a social, I'm trying a better way to put it, a social enterprise that has got this double bottom line strategy to it, that instead of it being a differentiator and an advantage in marketing your business or raising money or earning the confidence of prospective customers, how many have found that because meeting those objectives is maybe viewed as a bit of a cost, whether it's a cost of management resources or it's a financial cost? Who's found that as an impediment and actually a competitive disadvantage?
Wow.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
So,
Please, unless you've already introduced yourself, can you tell everybody who you are?
yeah, I'm Atul Hassan. I'm on the board of TiESep. Craig and I work together on several things.
And a great business person, and a great educator, and you're too shy. Okay, go ahead.
Many times when you want to focus on the social side, people compare you to a charity. And they just say, well, you should go that route rather than take the money route, which is typically, that's well understood. And the minute you make social, you almost have to get somebody who's on both sides to be able to understand and support you on that particular side. So I've had 3 or 4 attempts at different kind of social things. 2 have been successful, just because I could strong arm rich people. And you could put in some money of your own, so it was okay. But it does become difficult, and the challenge then becomes, what are you? Like, are you really a social kind of person, NGO, charity kind? Or are you an actual venture?
A traditional business. So messaging becomes more complex, getting that across to prospective supporters.
See, there's always this balance, and it's a very interesting balance. The question is, what are your KPIs? What are you trying to do? And if you say your KPI is this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this, and then people say, well, are you really looking for money? The good part is that there are several people who've come up, who've made quite a bit of money, who basically say, I like the outcome. If you focus only on that, I don't care what it costs, I'll back you up.
Yeah.
And I've found several of these people. I can't keep going back to the same set, but you can go back to some people, and if you've done it once or twice before, it actually helps.
For sure.
Because the next time you go, they don't think you're bullshitting. And, then you're okay.
Okay, I'm thinking, well, I should probably let my colleague step up. Do you want to do the introduction there, my friend?
I would request you to do that for the space conference.
Wow. Okay, I'd be happy to. So, I'm going to have to read this, sadly, and I apologize, because I've just had the pleasure of meeting Petra tonight. So let me tell you about this impressive person. So Petra is the executive director for the Imagination Catalyst, the university's student and alumni-centered entrepreneurship and innovation incubator accelerator. Which university?
OCADU.
Thank you very much, OCADU. Great organization. I'm going to read all this because it's pretty interesting. So Petra is a former publishing industry executive and award-winning entrepreneur whose most recent venture, the Fifth Town Artisan Cheese Company, became widely recognized as a leading-edge sustainable social purpose enterprise in the food industry. Under her leadership, the company won more than 32 product awards. That's impressive. Congratulations. Including several grand championships for its cheeses. Why are there none here? I'd like to know that.
Find out.
And several green building and sustainable enterprise management awards. These include the Guelph Food Technology Center Sustainable Enterprise of the Year Award, the Premier's Award for Agri-Food Innovation in 2009. Have you talked to people at Green Soil? I hope so. Have you? You know this?
No, I don't know.
Oh,
who
you
they
should.
are.
That's a great fund that invests only in
Oh.
agri-tech, so you should talk.
Okay.
The company, we'll chat after. The company was Canada's first platinum LEED certified manufacturing facility. That's amazing. Does anybody here not know what LEED is? Everybody knows, okay. Getting the platinum level
I was
is,
shaking my head, I don't know what
oh, LEED? So LEED is basically it stands for Leaders in Engineering Environmental Design. So it's a scoring methodology for determining, you get points for doing different things that meet certain environmental and mostly environmental things. So this office is a LEED Silver award. It's platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. And you get points for all kinds of things. If you use, the wood you use is, high growth renewable resources. If you have non-toxic adhesive, the amount of fresh light you get into, the maximum number of employees. It's very complex. It's really challenging to hit the platinum level. And to do that in a manufacturing facility, in fact, I've never heard that. I think that's unbelievable. So hat off to you. And Canada's 8th certified B Corporation, a designation indicating rigorous standards of social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about that tonight. Her company has been featured in numerous publications, including Fortune magazine. Before joining OCAD, she served as the entrepreneur in residence at the University of Guelph, a role that involved teaching, corporate social responsibility, guest lecturing on social enterprise and entrepreneurship, coaching aspiring entrepreneurs on campus, and serving as a dragon in numerous pitch competitions. Petra currently maintains a blog on the subject of social enterprise and entrepreneurship, and what I think we should do is, instead of reading that URL out to you, maybe you could,
Oh, I have it up on the.
you have it up on the
slide.
screen,
Yeah.
good, write it down.
Yeah.
I'm certainly going to read your blog, and I'm delighted to introduce you, and I'm very delighted to meet you, so please come forward, thank you.
Thank you.